Is it because you have enough is why you are thinking like this right now?
I had plans to go for higher studies, as I mentioned. So again, execution without strategy is haath pair marna, but not really going in a certain direction. In India, you see a lot more inequality, and in Western countries, you have a lot more equality. So AI is dramatically changing how we work and how we can enable ourselves to be to push ourselves further.
Was there a conscious choice to move from BCG to a startup?
Enjoyed being in the top 10% and did not like not being in the top 10%, for example. कि इससे ज़्यादा आप कमा लिया, अब लाइफ में इंक्रीमेंटल बेनिफिट नहीं मिल रहा है. अब जो चीज़ ड्राइव हो रही है वो आपकी ईगो ड्राइव हो रही है. बियॉन्ड अ पॉइंट आई डोंट नीड टू अर्न मोर. माई वाइफ इज ऑल्सो अर्निंग. माई फादर नेवर taught me the philosophy of earning more, or I never saw him work to earn, right?
But what has been the most important lesson while trying to figure out that perfect career?
The most important lesson would be to never stop learning, I guess.
The only thing on your mind was to start earning as soon as possible. Has it made you more grateful now in terms of looking back? Tell us, what is the biggest thing that corporate life has given you?
Sometimes you just start into a marathon and then you look back, why were you even running, right? I think that is some thought that I have always had for the last 10 years or so. I am really grateful for all the teachings that my father had. He used to write a lot, and just reading through all of them still gives me a lot of peace and satisfaction in the hope that I am doing something that he would be proud of.
We spend years chasing success, the titles, the money, the applause. And then one day, you wake up and realize you've reached the top, but you're still searching because no one tells you what to do after you have achieved everything, made it there. When the noise fades, you start asking bigger questions. Not how far I can go, but how far I have come, how I can still be and still feel whole. My guest today is a friend, Eshaan Agarwal from IIT Delhi, ex-BCG. He heads business for Australia at Cars24, has built everything most people dream of. And yet, what makes his story powerful is what he's still looking for. This conversation isn't about ambition anymore, or that's not what we are going to talk about. It's more about alignment. It's more about the search that begins once the race ends. Welcome to Real Verses with Saugat. This is verse 8, The Search After Success with Eshaan Agarwal. Let's dive right in. So thank you so much for being here with me today, Eshaan. It's wonderful. And I think, first of all, thank you also all the more because I think I reached out to you and I wasn't even sure if, because of work and everything, you would be able to take out time. But I think you were extremely sweet and very, very kind to have said yes right away, almost. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation because you have it what it takes or what most Indian parents ever dream of, right? So I think that to begin things, you are what the classic most loved middle class dream is all about. You passed out from IIT, where started your career with BCG, I suppose, if I'm not wrong, Boston Consulting Group, and now you head business for in a global role for a rather fast growing startup in India, which is Cars24. So I think in terms of when you're just all of 30 years of age right now, it's very much part of the Gen Z, I suppose. But yet, I think you've already seen a lot of success than a lot of others don't or haven't yet. But let's cut to maybe 10, 12 years back. Who was Eshaan before any of this happened? The boy who lost his father and, when he was, 18, 19 years of age. Even after such a big tragedy, you still kept building. Who was that Eshaan?
First of all, thank you, Swagatji, for having me here. It's as much a delight and a pleasure to be here. And thank you for considering me for this opportunity. You have started with a very deep question who was I probably 12 years back? I was a student, probably lost, as every student typically is. I graduated in IIT from IIT in 2016, but In 2014, when I lost my father, I was a second year graduate at IIT. I dreamt of doing a master's in the core, which was operations engineering, going to US to study, to work, come back to India, ultimately becoming a professor in IIT. I think that was my dream of what I
Really?
had felt, yes. So not a lot of people know this, but when I joined college, I was really excited about how things are made. So there were a few shows that used to come up, factory made, how it's made. And I really enjoyed knowing how manufacturing worked. And
You
my
like building things.
I liked building products, but not the kind of products that you think about today, but very hardcore products. And I used to be fascinated by how factories have been building and evolving. On all of these shows excited me a lot. My father used to joke like, "You don't have enough ambitions. You should aim for a computer science." But I was always more into production engineering, industrial engineering, and that's where luckily I got into IIT here. Eventually realizing that things evolved, things changed in my life. We'll come to that later. But the dream of being a professor still is there somewhere, and I think I'm still trying to figure that out. You actually touched upon my introduction in a very, I would say, overwhelming way. Success to me is dependent on how you look at it, and we can probably uncover it much more. Do I call myself successful? Probably yes, probably no. I think it's a very personal definition of success. Could be very different for me or for anybody else. So, would love to actually discuss about that as well. So yeah, thank you.
Wonderful,
For having me here.
wonderful. Yes, great start. I think I've been very very excited about this meeting you and having this conversation. Um, my first brush with IITs was obviously I never got to study in one. Never really studied that hard, I suppose. But I went to IIT Guwahati, because of a friend of mine, and I loved the campus. I think it's one of the largest
Yes.
campuses in India, and I kind of did manage to stick around for a few days, and I loved the atmosphere, and it's like this mini township, right? It's got everything within. Going back, what is life like today? Just maybe tell us about the rhythm, the routine. What does it look like as of today? What's life like?
I think it's a very different life versus where it was earlier. I got married 3 years back, and I'm really grateful for getting a very supportive and a beautiful wife. Her name is Isha. So we've been married for 3 years, no kids yet. And life right now is a lot about family, about work, about my personal growth, relationships. So typically, I'm working in a high pace environment. So work is a majority or a great, I would say, a great influence in how my day looks like. And apart from just work, I really love to learn new things. So like every 3 months or so, I'm onto something new. I was into music, then went into sketching. Now I am very excited about cooking. So just creating something or the other. I think I have this habit of just picking one thing up, uh, not closing it, but just like trying new things, right? So these days, I think life is a lot about work, a lot about bonding with the family, and also trying something new or the other on the side, which is like cooking, sketching, also learn dance. So a lot of things combined together.
Not bad at all, Eshaan. Um, you know, something that's been coming to my mind because I just very recently shot a very small video on manifestation, and I think a lot of people nowadays are talking a lot about it, right? For someone who has been used to executing plans, for someone, so you must have had a plan all throughout, right? So I mean, while we will talk about statistics a little later, but we all know that it's one of the most difficult examinations in India, when you get selected for an IIT, and that too, especially, one of the top ones, which is IIT Delhi. So for someone who's been used to planning, how much of it do you attribute to manifestation versus planning versus action? We do keep talking about it. Do you see all of this having come together for you, or how would you define it? How would you talk about it? What's your take?
According to me, manifestation is more like a vision which you want to achieve. And while it's a very important part of anybody's life that you should definitely manifest, think about how you want the future to look like. But for me personally, at least, I think a lot of it was the process, not the manifestation itself. So while studying back in 2010, I would remember when I was in class 10, class 11th. I think it was just small routines, small discipline, a bit of fear of not making it. I think a lot of the discipline that I got at that point of time about studying, and I genuinely enjoyed studying. I'm the kind of nerd. Somebody would joke about the first bencher. A lot of my friends say that. I was genuinely a nerd, loved studying, and I think that process was really helpful in getting me into IITs, for example, at that point. So I would say manifestation is important. But for me, I think the process and the discipline was more part of my puzzle, as I believe it, because manifestation without action is like delusion. So I always believed in action, and then sort of things fell through.
So if we were to, maybe convert this into a mathematical formula, would it be like manifestation is equal to hard work plus discipline plus maybe planning? I mean, is that how you would want to put it?
Possibly, yes. I think I have been part of consulting, which is hardcore strategy, and then you have execution. So again, execution without strategy is haath pair marna, but not really going in a certain direction. So I would say first start with vision, start with why, then go to what, which is the strategy part, and then the how and actually doing it, which is the execution. I think unless you have all the three together in some form, it's difficult to get to an outcome, and this combination of the three is important. So typically I would say a vision, strategy, and a planning, and then eventually an execution. All these three have to come together. Otherwise, either you will have ideas but you will not execute, you'll not reach there, or you don't have an idea, you're just reaching at the wrong place, and you'll just keep moving not knowing where you have to go. And that's where strategy and vision also comes into play.
True.
So manifestation is sort of a vision of your own life that you want to create, and that's where all of these three components to me is equally important.
The other component. So one is, of course, as you said, the vision, where you're thinking about what you really want.
Correct.
Then comes, in terms of how you're going to go about and
Correct.
get them or realize them, right? So I completely agree. Yes. I mean, I think manifestation just in itself can't take you anywhere.
Yeah.
Eshaan, do you ever look at your LinkedIn and have this moment of, oh, you know what, this looks perfect. But is it also the case where it does not feel perfect all the time?
Definitely, I would say LinkedIn for me, or what I've been through in my life from a career perspective, it's an outcome of things that I was doing. But at each step, I was not realizing, and I still don't know where I'm going, for example, right? When I was in IIT, did I think about I'll land into consulting? Definitely not. I had plans to go for higher studies, as I mentioned. When I was in consulting, did I really figure out I wanted to go for a startup? Definitely no. I'm currently working in a startup. Do I know that I would be here forever? Again, definitely no. So a lot of my LinkedIn or my career has been more nuanced with the situations and what felt right. And while some people say it was a potential switch that I have been doing, which is more of a conscious decision, my realization is a lot has to be attributed towards gut feeling of what you want to do, what are you liking and what you're not liking. So I would still say there are a lot of things that I do not know, which could be part of my LinkedIn or part of my life story, still evolving and still figuring that out. But yeah, I think looking back, I know I was fortunate enough to have had some situations, a little bit of luck and guidance and guidance from my parents that actually led me to where I am right now. But there's still a lot more to go.
Wonderful. We'll get a little more into detail into each of these aspects, and I really want to talk about some of these things in more detail. But just to kind of also ask you, I mean, you've also worked in Australia, and you head the current Australia business for Cars24. What would you say is maybe the most striking difference in the way people work or approach work in startups there versus how we do the same things here in India? Is there a fundamental difference in terms of how people approach startups in different countries as compared to India?
I would say there are two differences. One difference is just innate culture of Australia is very different versus culture of India is very different, and it comes from the kind of upbringing and the culture that they have had for the last hundreds of years versus how we've had for the last hundreds of years. Australia, less like any other Western country like US or Europe, they have a different way and the reason for work, which is not necessarily to earn money,
Right.
but to have something beyond life to actually enjoy. And that the primary purpose for an India-based person or an Indian is mostly around getting money or a financial reason why you would want to be in a company. While in Australia, the fundamental reason is something more. You actually connect, you actually do something that you enjoy, right? That's where even India is evolving now. But in Australia, the main difference is the intent for work is very different. That comes across in how serious you are at work. So they definitely love to be heads down 9 to 5, but then they will do a great productive work versus Indians are more like we will work for longer, but then you have some bit of chill here and there. I think the culture is very different. In a startup, definitely, I think while it might not translate into a startup versus a large company, but just the culture difference between Australia and India is something that's like very different, which we on a daily basis, working with so many people out there in Australia, have to take care of when you're working with
So
them.
you're saying, what I hear you saying is, but I'm just thinking, right? For a country as large as ours and with the kind of talent pools that we have,
Mm-hmm.
Indians are wanted everywhere in the world
Correct.
today.
Correct.
Is it because, I mean, more developed countries have a better security net in terms of, social security or, some sort of financial security that the structures, the government or, the societal structures provide as compared to India? Because obviously here we're just kind of, it's a rat race, right? Everybody is running because we want to make sure that we can secure our future. But do you think that's one of the reasons, or do you think there is something more to it than meets the eye?
I would say that is definitely one of the reasons, but two primary reasons, and maybe I think there might be a third one, but two primary. One is supply and demand. In India, you have a lot of supply of resources, and demand is sort of limited
Right.
versus the kind of resources that you have. So, employees do work longer hours. We are working in a competitive environment where if I am not working as much, there is somebody else who's willing to work as much, right? Not just a number of hours, but also the quality of work at the same time. That is not so much the case in Australia, like you have, or any other developed countries for that matter, where you have a good amount of supply, you have a good amount of demand as well. There is a bit of balance,
More balance
more
as
balance that
compared
you
to
have
India.
there. So that's the first reason that I would say. The second reason is also in India, you see a lot more inequality, and in Western countries, you have a lot more equality. So, um, generally speaking, the power hierarchy that exists in developed countries is much lower than versus what we have in India. You would have a junior person joining in Australia, going straight to the CEO and saying that you're not running the company the right way. I have a few inputs that you could do. Think about this in India. You cannot imagine somebody, even just a junior, coming to you and saying that you're not a good manager, right? And that I have personally experienced. And equality not just comes from a power hierarchy, but also from the income as well. So in India, there are a lot of studies. You would have the CEO versus the bottommost employee. The wage gap is 100x versus in Australia, you would typically see that as 5x, right? So the kind of growth potential that India shows with respect to if you do well, you can actually reach to a great amount of financial income and stability versus because there's not that much of an equality in developed countries, you do not typically see people striving for that kind of growth as well because people are typically happy with what they have, and that brings a lot more shift towards sustainable working, which developed countries are able to manage. But in India, I think they're still getting there. And some part of things like fire movement, etc., are just an extreme versions of having to strive for that stability or sustainable working that we have started seeing here in India. But unfortunately, a large working class is still not financially stable enough to reach there. So I think that gap still exists, primarily of the two reasons as per me.
Eshaan, what are the three things you would ask every young professional to stop doing right away? In terms of India, I mean, I mean, just taking this conversation one notch further. You've worked in a global environment, you've worked in India, and I think we just discussed the various variables and factors that influence both these work environments, right? And the outcomes and
Mhm.
what happens to people's lives. So if you were to advise young professionals today, what would those three things be that you would ask them to stop doing right away?
I would include both stop and start. It's a great question. So the first and probably the biggest for me would be stop comparing.
Okay.
Everybody has a different journey. I have had a different journey which was defined by my situations and my personal interests
Mm-hmm.
versus somebody else might be on a completely different path. And what you are seeing is just tip of the iceberg. You do not know exactly what's going on in the other person's world. What you might call as a success, they might not feel as a success. So the relative understanding of what success even means might be super different, right? So the first one would be to just stop comparing. And
Everybody's journey is unique and
it's completely unique. The second thing I would ask them to stop doing is, which to a certain extent I have been through. So like I would tell my previous self, stop doing, please take care of your health. No amount of hustle is worth it as soon as you have one single illness coming out in your report that you suddenly have diabetes or certainly have hypertension. Thankfully, touch wood, I don't have it yet. But did I not show behaviors that would eventually lead me to it? I did hustle quite a lot and did not take care of my health. I think that's the second part. The third thing would probably be, I think friendships and relationships are everything in the end. A lot of studies have shown that, a lot of Harvard studies, in fact, have shown that over hundreds of years, just one thing that's the biggest influence towards happiness is actually relationships. Thankfully, on that front, I have never compromised. I've always been with my family, and I've had great friendships over the past. But again, want to move to a new city? Definitely do, but don't lose people who are close to you, right? I think just make sure you have friends, you have relatives, you have a family to come back home to when things are not right, and stop ignoring them, stop moving on, just hold on to the people. I think these three things would be my
True. I think
advice.
it's just a very sweet coincidence because both these things that you talked about, I think I've quoted them hundreds of times so far in my life. So the Harvard study actually conducted over, I think, a century and a half, I
Correct.
think 150 years.
Correct.
They concluded, or the study concluded, that people who live the longest and live the healthiest are not people who are the richest or have access to better health care or infrastructure, but it's the people who have the most fulfilling social lives.
Correct. Correct.
Number one. And yes, I mean, of course, to actually look at people and relationships as the most important cornerstone of your life, I think that is also something that I've come to truly believe in, especially since I think both of us do share this grief in common, which is to have lost our fathers. I mean, you lost yours much earlier. I think I was a little more fortunate. But coming to that, I think you were just all of 19 years of age,
Yes.
Eshaan. You had just gotten admissions in IIT Delhi, and in the middle of all of this, while you were possibly planning your life and your career, and कि मुझे इसके आगे क्या करना है, क्या बनना है, suddenly you lose your father, and I'm sure it's an experience that no son is ever ready for, irrespective of whether you're 19 or 90. I think I was older than you, much older than you when I lost my father in 2023. And as we were talking about it just before we started rolling, it's an experience that changes you forever. What was that phase like?
I think I never prepared for it, as you mentioned, right? Like losing somebody who you really love. Honestly, that phase, I was in my second year. I'll talk about my professional life and my personal. What did I go through personally? First, professional. I was in my fourth semester at IIT. Suddenly had to withdraw the semester. My father had a terminal illness. He was ill for like 4 months before he passed away. And there was a lot of uncertainty from a professional angle. Fourth semester in IIT is all about becoming secretaries, getting a position of responsibility, becoming something big in the institute. I think a lot happens in the fourth semester, and there was a lot of juggle in my mind. I am losing out on something in college when I'm not there, but my father is here. And if I look back, I have no regrets of withdrawing my semester and being with my family at that point. From a personal angle, it was obviously super tough. You're never prepared for it. Somehow, I have an elder sister, and we both, and my mother, who is a homemaker, the three of us did not even know how life could look like. So you never are aware about what would happen next. And that entire 4 month, my father was also in pain. So it was a very humiliating journey in the end, to realize that this is something that could happen to anybody at any point of time. And
The helplessness of
the helplessness of it, the uncertainty of it, and just the fact that you have a hero and the hero is not able to pick himself up. I think that feeling is just too deep to forget. So I think it's personally speaking, it was difficult, a lot that I have learned out of it. It forced me to grow. It forced my sister to grow up. But I guess who I am right now has a lot to do with who my father was, and that entire episode when he was not well, the learnings that came along with it.
how did you, kind of compartmentalize, or how did you integrate ambition and responsibility at that point?
I think during the 4 months, I was just numb, honestly speaking. Like there was no thought of ambition or no thought of responsibility at that point. I knew that things were very different and they could be very different. But I guess ambition was just to minimize the pain that you have at that point, right? I think there's nothing that you could do to plan your career at that point. It's not the most important thing anymore. How did I come out of it? I think a lot has to also be with how my family supported. Again, those times, my Tauji and a lot of people who were close to me, they were super supportive during that time. That helped me to come out of it. But how did it change my ambition? As I mentioned, it moved me from like I'll go for higher studies, I'll come back and be a professor, start earning probably after 30, to now earning becomes the most important priority right now, which is where changed my gears, thought about a lot of things I could do, but eventually thought about just sitting in placements and getting a job, right? So, and then seeing how life would take me further from there. So ambitions changed. And in fact, it was more situation driven, where I felt like we'll figure out higher studies later, but let's actually just start earning, start stabilizing the family. So that's where the entire journey of my life sort of evolved into that direction.
So am I. I can relate with that. If he was here around you today, and had seen everything that you have earned, achieved, reached wherever you are now, what advice do you think he would have given you today, as of now? कि बेटा यहाँ से क्या?
I personally feel he would say इतना काम मत कर, काफ़ी काम कर रहा है, ज़्यादा काम कर रहा है, इतना काम मत कर. He was from a government job. He had a government job, and he always wanted me to do something which is much more sustainable, have my own life, work lesser, enjoy rather than trying to earn. And I still feel, while he would be super proud, but he would still come back to me and give an advice, itna kaam mat kar. Just to put it very bluntly.
True. And I think, yes, I mean, I do not know you, or I never got to know your father, or I don't know you as well. But I think, yes, I think had I been in that's the first thing that would have come to my mind as well, if I had to advise my son, who's 3 years old today. And that is what I'm trying to do. Eshaan is where I would want to see him grow up and do whatever he wants.
Correct.
Just love his life. I think he should not feel, overwhelmed, or in any way pressured into being pushed into something which he is not ready for. I think that is what I would also tell my son, maybe 20 years down the line.
And if I can add, I think we as a generation are blessed to be able to provide that opportunity to our kids as well. Last generation, our parents' generation, and if you look at one generation older, they were just trying to figure out the basics, and that is what they were providing to us. Roti, kapda aur makan. That is what they were trying to figure out for us, right? Now, it was not that they did not want us to like do everything that we wanted, but the situations and mindsets that they had was really what was necessary at that point of time. And now, as each generation is evolving, that need for working to earn is actually going down. And that's where a lot of new generations, you call them Gen Zs, But I personally believe the kind of mindsets that they have right now is much more sustainable, and that also has to do with the hustle and the growth that their earlier generation has actually done to give them a platform to be able to do everything that they want, which I think in a lot of our parents' cases, it did not exist because they were forced to do or they were supposed to do something that would make the family more financially stable. And again, I think with this point, again, grateful that our parents and our grandparents actually got us out of that loop of having to work to earn to actually having to work to enjoy. I think that's what we can think about our kids, just because all the generations before us have made that sacrifice.
True, true. You're right. Coming to something. Let's come to the now. I think you've been living the as I started, right, the Indian dream. IIT Delhi, started your career with Boston Consulting Group, BCG, and now a very meaty and a very important role at Cars24. But what has been the most important lesson while trying to figure out that perfect career path so far, Eshaan? What is that one most important lesson? At least till the number of years that you've put into your career so far. You worked in a very stable organization, a consulting company such as BCG. Then coming to the very dynamic world of startups in India right now, and that too, especially when they're at a very high growth phase, right? It's every day is a new challenge. Every day you are solving 10 different problems, and no problem is the same as it was yesterday.
Correct.
So what has been that one most important lesson that you think you might have picked up while trying to get the perfect career curve?
So that's an interesting question. And if I reflect, the most important lesson would be to never stop learning, I guess. Because when I was in consulting, I joined as an engineer. I was thrown into a project where I was on day one of my career, I was consulting a startup on how to run sales reviews. And I had no idea about what sales reviews was. We did not have ChatGPT back then. I still remember those days when I was struggling on what does it mean, right? And from there to where I am today, I think a lot of learning has happened. Some of them is just by the nature of the job. Thankful to BCG to actually provide that opportunity. And a lot was also just my curiosity of just trying to learn something new. And why never stop learning is super important is that it's not just about startups being like a very fast pace anymore. I think the macro environment around us is changing. AI is dramatically changing how we work and how we can enable ourselves to be to push ourselves further. There are a lot of cultural nuances that are coming up with respect to how do we lead teams, for example, what motivates people of the younger generation. So a lot more learning has to happen much more rapidly around how we work and why we work, which is where never stop learning even becomes more important now than ever. So that would be just one takeaway that I have taken for the last 10 years of my career. Be it a small thing or a big thing, just never stop learning.
True, absolutely. Very, very important part is to just keep learning throughout your life. And I think that actually does happen, irrespective of whether you want it or not. I think you're forced to, kind of, life does teach you a new lesson every now and then. But was there a conscious choice to move from BCG to a startup? After BCG, you came into Cars24, right?
Yes.
So why did that happen, or why did you think of that move?
It was so that there was a phase. This was back in 2020 December. We had COVID. The best part of consulting was travel. And suddenly COVID just came and stripped that best part and left us with the worst part, which is too much work, right? So a lot of my colleagues at that point of time were actually contemplating. I had a very brilliant project at BCG, which was in automotive sector. Really enjoyed the work. We were building a big digital business for a very large auto OEM. And that got me excited about automotive in general. Then got a couple of projects where I was really enjoying, but then the what next after this was hitting me quite hard. That's where this opportunity came in, spoke to the founder, spoke to the then manager, and realized that I wanted to move on to something which is more hands-on. I was already a little bit pained about the kind of work life I had at BCG at that point, especially without the travel. So it just naturally happened. I am not a kind of person who switches companies a lot. I typically want to go deeper into a problem statement because I believe I can start adding value over time much more. So the skills and the experience in a company compounds. So the best work actually comes in after 2 years, 1 or 2 years. That's how fundamentally I think about it. So I've never switched after that. Still enjoying Cars24. So I think I'll be here for a while. But it was more like a pain driven plus something really great came up. So that kind of a combined thought that went behind and me switching.
So was it because it was a company that reached out to you with a role that you thought you could just sink your teeth into, or what was it like? Just you just wanted to get out of BC or consulting at that point of time because of the unpredictability that COVID brought with it.
I would say the role that I was offered was even much more unpredictable. So, like Cars24 just wanted to launch Australia. They had 5 employees, 10 employees back then, and the co-founder who I work with right now, I had just a great conversation. Like it was a very inspiring conversation with him and the then CEO of Australia, and I think that hooked me much more. That I wanted to actually learn from people who I get inspired from. And building a business wasn't that easy. Cars24 was 6 years into existence and a new geography. I was just on day one, I was told, we don't know what you have to do. Can you figure out your role yourself? I think that's the kind of uncertainty with which I was hired. But I've had multiple role changes in Cars24 so far. And I think that risk really paid off because I've learned a lot in these last 4 years.
So has there been added pressure because of that achiever tag all your life, Eshaan? I mean, is there added pressure? And if there is, how do you normally deal with it?
The pressure does not come from society, honestly. It comes from within. There is a sort of standard for excellence that I hold, which I'm trying to slowly sort of get down, where that pressure sometimes is just built from my own expectations of the level at which I want to perform. I have never. Obviously, there is pressure from work. The work is demanding for everybody, including me. But a lot has to come in from my own boundaries, which have not really been that rigid in the past, where I have taken more work. I have not said no enough. And I have figured out ways to attract more work as well, right? So I think the pressure gets built up from your own expectations of how good you want to be. And part of this also comes in from constantly trying to be in the top 10 percentile of your life. I think that is a baggage that I am trying to now get rid of. In no way I'm trying to say that I was great, but at least I enjoyed being in the top 10% and did not like not being in the top 10%, for example. And that feeling still drives a certain part of me, which is something that I'm now realizing as a pattern and trying to get rid of.
But why do you want to get rid of it? Isn't it exhilarating in terms of the ride, or no? And I'm very mindfully. I think I am very deliberately wanting to just maybe pick your brain a little more on this. Why are you mentioned that you're trying to consciously bring that down? Why?
I think there's a bit of and it this answer might be very different for everybody. I'm still figuring out myself a lot more, and where I believe my current axis in life has been, that axis is not completely aligned to the values that I had when I was a child, right?
Okay.
Now, when I'm working more, when I'm trying to grow financially, now there is an inflection point that anybody in their life would have कि इससे ज़्यादा आप कमा लिया, अब लाइफ में इंक्रीमेंटल बेनिफिट नहीं मिल रहा है. अब जो चीज़ ड्राइव हो रही है वो आपकी ईगो ड्राइव हो रही है. Beyond a point, I don't need to earn more. My wife is also earning. And as a couple, do I work because I want to earn money? That's not the reason. But I work because I want to learn and I want to keep myself occupied. Now, that is the right purpose. Now, if I want to maximize that, I don't want to work where I'm not comfortable working for long hours, for example, working in a toxic environment, for example. So I am much more choosy about where I work, which is why Cars24 has been great so far. And hence, do I want to constantly switch? Yeah, next company जाते हैं 20% hike, next जाते हैं 10% hike. I think that's not the kind of mindset I now believe in. Versus maybe when I was just out of college, उस time पे था यार, financial growth was the most important access I wanted to have in life. But now health is important. Now relationships are important. Now mental well-being is important. So other axes have now opened up, spirituality and like just having a deeper connection beyond just your current life. I think those axes are now starting to open up, which are increasingly becoming much more important for me in my life at this point. So that's where I think there's a bit of a shift over the last 2 years, 3 years that I've been feeling quite a lot.
So, Eshaan, my last guest
Mm-hmm.
a couple of weeks ago is again part of the Generation Z.
Mm-hmm.
She was an ex-colleague. She's been a social media influencer. And I think we were having a conversation about what drives Generation Z.
Mm.
She was very candid and very point blank in telling me that it is money.
Mm.
Everything and anything that Generation Z does, most of it is driven by money and, the urge to have more and more.
Mm.
Your state of mind right now, where you want to be more mindful,
Mm-hmm.
where you want to focus more on the other aspects of life,
Mm-hmm.
do you think it is uh, the reality now because of the fact that you are more secure in your own skin in terms of your financial health versus what it was maybe a few years ago? Do you think that's also something that drives people? I mean, in terms of the quest to. But the one point that the couple of things that I'm kind of drawing from what you said, right? So one is to know and understand when to draw that boundary.
Correct.
I think that's something that more and more people need to figure out. I think a lot of people are. We do see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
I do see a lot of people quitting their comfortable, 7-figure salaries and moving to a quaint hill station to open a
Correct.
cafe and, being very content in life. That's one part of it. The other part is the insta hungry, the fame hungry, the money hungry people who, again, I'm not judging anyone or, this is not a platform to do that, but I'm just trying to think in terms of what drives these individual behaviors. I mean, in terms of what you said. So is it that people are but do people actually really stop when they have reached enough? How would you look at it? I mean, is it because you have enough is why you are thinking like this right now?
I would definitely say it has a huge role. Like, would I be able to think about this 10 years earlier? Probably no.
Right.
And it also has to do a lot with the values that you've had, the family upbringing that you've had, what mattered to you at that point of time. So, for example, throughout my life, I started as a middle class, but then my father got promoted, and then we had, like, I would say we moved to an upper middle class by the time I was out from school. Now, my father never taught me the philosophy of earning more, or I never saw him work to earn, right? And that's where my need for earning or earning fast and financially becoming independent was more of me trying to get out of when my father was not there and then get the family out of a financial risk. Now, at this point, a lot of me and my colleagues and my friends, ex-friends from BCG, they are going through a similar situation where you've had enough that beyond a point, your life is not going to dramatically change by earning another 20% of your salary, right? And that comes in more with your experience and the savings that you end up getting. So I have a few friends who are already into the FIRE journey, for example. I am seeing therapy is becoming increasingly common amongst my friend groups and peer groups, and people are being open about it. And all of these conversations are coming up because there is a platform or a base that we have been able to establish, especially in this generation of people who are like 28 to 45. I think that generation has started creating that base for themselves to be able to think about it, right? Now, if I were 22 back again, would I have not made the same choices? I would have asked my 22-year-old self to exactly take the same journey, because I think it now gives me freedom and space to take a step back and really think on what I want to do next, which would have been not possible had I not taken that journey, for example.
Eshaan, I mean, I think we've already talked about a lot of, I think, core, deep aspects of our lives, right? So maybe tell us what is the biggest thing that that corporate life has given you,
Mm-hmm.
and what is the one thing that it has also taken away?
if you were to really ask me one thing, I think it'll be difficult. But
No,
corporate,
okay, it could be a
yeah,
couple
yeah,
of
yeah.
things.
But it's important that I nail the one actually. One thing is, I think it has given me an approach to stay disciplined and consistent, because at work, every other day, every day, there's a new problem to solve, and unless you are consistent and disciplined in what you're doing, I think it just becomes difficult that you be a good employee, for example. And that process of being disciplined and consistent, when applied to a lot of aspects into your personal life as well, I think that teaches you a lot. It gives some structure around your life, and that really is one thing that I would say is important to live a good life as well. Um, and I would not say that it's not something that you can earn without a corporate life, but with corporate life, I think you get that discipline and a structure about a learning curve that you can have. What it has taken away probably is um, a risk appetite, probably. I think when you get a paycheck, you cannot do away with that paycheck. So if I were to now think about not having a job and do something of my own, I would probably think about starting something of my own, maybe a tech company, maybe not a tech company, maybe just a small cafe, for example. Now, that's something that would bring a little more peace, because I would do something that I really wanted to do. But one thing that it takes away, the job takes away, is just that risk taking capability of not having a paycheck next month, because you just get used to it. You just get used to having a certain amount of bank balance. And a lot of people, a lot of my colleagues have actually left their jobs. One of them was with me in Cars24. And when he mentioned, it just hit me quite strongly that every year I would have an SIP, but the day I had to do an SWP, that was the trigger. That when he quit his job, that was a trigger. Something is very different, and that is what sort of the risk taking capability that it takes away from you.
What is SWP, Ishan?
Systematic withdrawal plan. So you were
Achha.
earlier investing because he was earning money, and then when he stopped working, he wanted to be with his daughter, who was very young. Very bold decision. Then he started withdrawing money from his savings, and seeing your savings go down, I think that in itself is a big step. That if you are too used to working in a company or a startup or like in a job, that feeling of having to withdraw money from your savings, I think that hits you quite a lot. So you become a little more risk averse. That's what I would say is one thing that a job takes away.
So, I mean, I think, as you said, I mean, the the entire aversion to risk,
Mm-hmm.
it also comes from the fact that maybe earlier, or rather compared to earlier, when our fathers had uh, or did not have to think
Mm-hmm.
much about their post-retirement life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they would have a pension coming in,
Correct.
obviously, which is, I mean, my father led a very simple life.
Mm-hmm.
I think beyond his retirement, or even when he was working, I think his needs and wants were very, very humble, so to speak, right? So after retirement, I think whatever pension he was getting was it was sufficient for him.
Mm-hmm.
Now I suppose, it's a very different story, because, you do not have any pension most of the places.
Correct.
The paychecks have become much fatter,
Correct.
which on paper looks rather,
Mm.
quite alluring, I must say. And I think that's the word that I'd like to use. So I think maybe that's also increased the aversion to risk, because I think earlier maybe, the size of the paycheck also matters, right?
Correct.
And I think maybe that's also another reason why this has happened.
Mm.
Does it also make you ever feel guilty
Mm-hmm.
of wanting more, even though you already have so much? Is there ever like a feeling of guilt that comes in, Ishan?
Not a feeling of guilt, honestly, but a feeling of sometimes, yes, could I be doing something of my own, which I would enjoy probably more. Thankfully, I'm enjoying my work here at Cars24 so far. But if I were to not have a job, maybe there's always a FOMO. There's always a brighter thing on the other side. Maybe I might be doing something that excites me more. I think there's that feeling sometimes. I did have a few business ideas, but then felt like it wasn't mature at that point of time for me to pursue them. But now I think if I continue to not do it or suppress things that I want to do, even 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, I think that's where at some point I'll realize it is too late for me to start something of my own or do something that I enjoy, start traveling. A lot of people have been doing it, right? So not really guilty so far because I'm grateful for what I've learned. But it's incredibly important to understand when to take a step back. And I think that's the journey, that's the fine balance or that tipping point, which is not a clear tipping point. On like, now I've had enough of job, now let's do something else. And that's the line which is just too blur to me to say that I'm feeling guilty about working or earning too much, for example, at this point.
I keep wondering, I mean, and how is it that people can actually balance their lives where we are able to focus more on what really matters? So one, I understand, of course, the basics, and I think the way we spoke about it in the beginning in terms of the difference how companies or startups work in India versus Australia, right? The scarcity mindset versus the more of an equality driven structure society rather. And here you were talking about this inflection point that 20% raise year on year on your salary is not going to bring in a humongous level of change in terms of your life. What do you think should come next? I mean, so I think, if I were to look at you, Eshaan, 30 years of your life, the first 19, obviously, cushy, within the comforts of your home with your parents looking over you, watching over you. And in the next 11 years of a lot of hustle and a lot of, I suppose, a struggle, bringing yourself to this position of some influence now where you are at least be able to sit here and, kind of have this conversation. What do you think should ideally come next? How would you want to, kind of write the next part of your life script?
That's a very deep question. And I was writing about this a few days back, that ultimately what matters the most, to me at least, and it's very personal, is alignment. And alignment to me comes across 4 dimensions. The first one is alignment with the matter, which is the body, which is the physical part. You have to feel good, feel the energy, physically speaking. The second is an alignment with the mind, where you are you feeling cluttered in your head, or are you feeling peace? What's the kind of emotion you're feeling right now? The third one is meaning, which is what's the meaning you're attaching to yourself, your story, what's your story to be told out to the world in your mind, and the others would speak about you. And the fourth one is more alignment with the mystical, which is more spiritual or something larger that you connect to beyond your personal life, right? I think I don't know the answer what next, but the answer would be towards an alignment of these 4 together. Just having a great physique but not being mentally well does not work. Having a great mental well-being but you are suffering with a disease, that also doesn't work.
But I suppose both would need to coexist, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's the balance. Like, what next would actually mean that these 4 are getting aligned to yourself. And I think that's where I personally wrote about it, and I'll probably share it sometime. But whatever is next will actually just bring an alignment back to these 4 dimensions in my life. Still yet to figure out what that would be, but just being aware that this is how I would think, I think just gives me some guiding principle. If I were to choose something eventually, I would probably use these 4 as an anchor to figure out, is it really aligning me to myself eventually, or is it taking me away further from that? And that would be probably guiding me to the next decision after this.
You mentioned the word peace. And I think, to me, personally, I do not see anything more important in my own life compared to peace. I think my father used to say कि मेरी जिंदगी में सुख कितना रहेगा मुझे नहीं मालूम, but what I definitely don't want to lose is कि मैं शांति नहीं खोना चाहता.
That's a very powerful statement.
No, I must live in peace. So when people pass away, right, what we say is, what we pray
Rest in peace.
is to rest in peace. So what would you say peace means to you, Eshaan?
Peace would be probably reflecting on my day, reflecting on my week, reflecting on my month, and not having a FOMO, something to regret. Being content with what I have, being grateful for what people I have around me and the situation that I have at that point. Just being okay with what I have, right? I think it's more you are stressed, which is the negative of peace when your expectations versus the reality is different.
Or
And
you are either not happy with it.
or you're not happy because you want to be here and you're here. Now this could be financial, this could be physical, this could be mental.
True.
As soon as your expectations matches what your reality is, then you are at peace, according to me. And what we continuously do in our daily hustle life is keep on raising our expectations and trying to bring our reality to that expectation in the hope of finding peace. I think for me now is probably rebalancing this a bit. My reality is here, my expectations are here. This is what is causing the lack of peace. There is this access to move, which is a reality going up, but expectation should also start not going up as my
Either
reality goes.
stay stable or maybe
maybe go down, and that's
Why
where,
not?
that's where this entire movement of people moving back from US to India has started happening. A lot of my friends are considering that. People moving from metro cities to tier 1s, tier 2s, where they are finding better, while there's lack of infra, but there's better air, for example. There's less cost of living, so you don't have to earn as much, for example, going to the hills and just enjoying the nature, right? So for
Like the
me,
quality of life, I think.
quality of life is, in a way, it's
यहाँ
better.
पे आप और मैं करते क्या है? आप सुबह 45 मिनट ट्रैफिक में लगाते हो,
Correct.
शाम को 45 मिनट, तो 90 मिनट यहाँ हो गए.
Correct.
10 घंटे आपने ऑफिस में लगा दिए,
Correct.
तो आपके 12 घंटे दिन के यहीं चले गए. आपने अगर 7 घंटे 8 घंटे आप सो लिए, तो 12 और 8 हुए 20.
Correct.
बाकी बचे 4 घंटे जिसमें आपको खाना भी है, नहाना भी है, आपको अपना माइंडफुलनेस भी प्रैक्टिस करना है.
Correct.
You have to spend time with your family, your loved
Correct.
ones. Time कहाँ है यार?
Weekend to weekend जीते. And I think that's what a lot of us have been doing. So for me, to answer back your question, expectation को नीचे रखना is important because reality तो ऊपर जाती रहेगी और आपकी expectation भी अगर ऊपर जा रही है तो आप peaceful नहीं हो सकते. And this is something that I'm seeing, but am I living this 100%? Probably no.
Is there something that you are consciously doing now or you want to do to bring in a little more stillness in your life? Because I honestly think of this. See, again, while I do not want to make this conversation purely, more, I suppose, more to do with philosophy. But I think it's important now, right? Because it is a very transitionary phase in our lives. We were talking during the break, in terms of where we are versus how life is mic'd or is likely to look like maybe 10 years, 5 years and 10 years and 15 years from now, because things are changing way too fast. The cycle, the duration of the cycles is getting shorter by the day.
Correct.
So, and I really feel that I think it's time now, instead of continuing to run after whatever we run after, and half of us don't really know what we run after. Is there something that you think you are doing or you want to do to bring in that stillness back in your life?
I think within the question you had the answer. Sometimes you don't even know what you're running after, right? The biggest thing is just realizing that. What am I running after and why I'm running towards it? Over the last 4 or 5 years, I've started realizing one thing that I really enjoy is learning. And I don't learn to earn. I think I earn to learn. And I just enjoy every bit of new thing that comes up. And I just enjoy connecting AI to spirituality, to something around science. So just all of these things coming together, I believe what we are really trying to do here, and what I am trying to do is just connect the dots, consume, learn. And at some point I've seen the things that I was learning when it was 10 years back. I did not even know why am I even learning that. And 10 years later, it just connects together. Okay, now I understand this is what I'm trying to do. So I think the biggest thing that I am doing right now is just to learn a bit more about the world, how it's moving, and learn a bit more about myself on what I enjoy. Ikigai wala moment kabhi na kabhi aayega. वो पता नहीं कब आएगा, but I think unless we keep on learning about us and the world, वो ikigai wala moment अपने आप नहीं आता out of nowhere. I think you have to sort of keep knowing yourself better to be able to achieve, and that's what I'm trying to do increasingly, just with new skills, new hobbies, just figure out what I enjoy, and hopefully that someday becomes my go-to thing or everything.
So right now, would you say peace is it a place, is it a mindset, or is it a moving target?
I think peace never moves. Peace is still.
Peace is still. It's us who
Yeah,
keep moving.
yeah, we keep moving, and we can always be peaceful, but we choose not to. um so I would never say peace moves. Peace is that alignment that I was talking about. It's just that we align ourselves to probably one axis over the other, and all of them coherently four together is actually peace. So peace never moves, according to me. It's the most still thing that you can, a still state of mind you can be in, and it's for us to slow down and realize that it exists.
So, Ishan, I mean, considering you are an engineer by education, also, I think you've been done a lot of work in strategy with BCG, with Cars24. You are obviously heading business for an entire country. So there has to be a lot of analytics going on in your mind at all times, right? So how do you balance the spiritual side with the analytical one now?
I think a lot has to do with my wife being more spiritual and I being more analytical.
Okay.
So in my mind, before my wedding, before my marriage, it's almost 3 years now. I was the more logical side, and I'm still the more logical side. And to me, I think she's building that balance. She's still at BCG, so she's also in the same background, again from IIT Delhi, and then went to BCG. But she's the spiritual side, and we both together are sort of balancing each other because both of them are required at some point. Internally, it's more just about reflecting back. My father was very spiritual. My mother is very religious, and just everything that I have been taught to me, which is there in my subconscious, I think that started to come across now much more, which is where practices like meditation, which my wife does quite a lot, she's bringing that mindfulness into me. She just keeps on giving me two things that I should say every day. And I think that slow journey will sort of take me there. So it's a lot to do with other people trying to bring that spirituality. And I think that's something that I was destined to learn, and my wife and my family is actually very spiritual that way. I am more of the logical kind.
Great. I think I just hope that this journey continues, because I do remember, and I think and I think I've told you this in terms of how your name came up in a conversation that I was having with someone that we both know well. And when he mentioned that, I think, I have this friend who's done great for himself, and knows that, somewhere he takes up a project or takes up something, and, is unable to stop, right? So in this, and I think while we have talked about it already, in this age of AI and growth and constant motion, Ishaan, how does one define, I mean, as someone who has, at least you have cracked the outer code in terms of, whatever success you have been able to garner because of your efforts, because of your work, something that I think a lot of people are unable to see, or achieve during their lifetimes. How does one define enough? How do we get to that point, or how would you say, how do you think you are going to get to that point where you would be able to tell yourself कि अच्छा ठीक है अब मैं रुक सकता हूँ?
I think it's the purpose of this podcast is for me to get one step closer to that. I think it's a continuous journey. Like, I have never reached that point, but I know when I would be able to reach that point would be when I think about stopping or pausing my hustle life and realizing that things aren't changing anymore. So at some point, for example, enough would mean that, like, there are a lot of calculations on financial calculators. आपके पास अगर अपनी annual salary का X times है, then you have enough. But I think having enough is more to do with your ego than a spreadsheet. And I would say it's a difficult one where you have to take a conscious call that this is what is now a priority in my life. sometimes it comes from, I've seen with a few of my friends, it comes from adverse situations. Their job say, unfortunately, they were laid off. Now they are in that reflective zone. Have I had enough? Oh, actually, I've had enough. So it might be tied to a bigger incident. But generally, while you are at it, it's a constant evolution and no clear definition of an enough, unfortunately. And I'm still figuring that out. But I believe, I think it just comes across as a place where you don't feel like working for money anymore and you feel like you have a bigger purpose on which you should be working on. I'm still trying to get to that path, honestly speaking.
Yes, I think so are we, all of us. I think that is possibly the reason I'm possibly having a very, a very intimate heart-to-heart conversation with you, even though we are doing a podcast. But I thought that, these are important things that come to my mind. And I wanted them to share them and, kind of throw at another individual and see how he or she reacts to it, right? Is there also, Eshaan, I mean, or let's just say, what would you say is the biggest myth about success that no one told you about before you got here?
I think the definition of success, you might be calling I'm successful. I might be calling somebody else successful. Now, our definition of success is different. You might be looking at my LinkedIn and might be saying I'm successful. I might be looking at your current personality and say you are amazing, for example. Somebody might be looking at somebody else and saying you have a great family and you are having a great time with them. I might go to somebody and say you are traveling a lot, you are successful. So I think the definition of success is very different.
True.
And we all try to get to the same definition without knowing the underlying story. And the biggest myth is to live on the expectations of a definition of success, which is different for everybody.
I think we have talked a lot about a lot of deep things, and as I think we have also been talking about in the breaks as well, Eshaan. I think these are topics that I find are very close to my heart, and some things which I feel are very important and very critical. I think more and more people are taking up these conversations, these discussions, in terms of mindfulness, in terms of wellness, and I am sure that more and more people are going to pick these things and talk about this more and more. I think let's also now talk about the other part of your life, the one very important or one of the most important partnerships that you have, and which is with your wife. So both of you are, I think, from IIT Delhi.
IIT Delhi, correct.
Were you guys batchmates?
No, she was 4 years younger in generation. We met during a campus recruitment process.
Okay.
She was then eventually in BCG.
So how long did you date before you?
Probably 3 months before we told our parents.
Really?
Yes, I think it was pretty short.
So were you that sure about each other?
Yes.
In that short span of time?
Thankfully, yes. I think there was no red flag whatsoever. And then we decided to just take it to the family by delay. So we had a pretty short time period between us realizing that we like each other to actually ending up getting married.
Awesome.
So it was a pretty short time and no regrets for
And how long has it been that you guys are married now?
We're just turning 3 years in February.
Wonderful. So both of you from IIT Delhi, both of you have had good careers so far. Both of you rather, I mean, in the Gen Z language, killing it professionally. How do you make sure that it is love at home and does not end up becoming a competition sometimes?
Oh, it's something that people ask, honestly speaking, but it's more to do with the choices that we are taking now. So I moved out of BCG 4.5 years back because I felt like I wanted to have more family time. At some point, I was taking 5 flights in a week. I was in South India, just traveling to Bangalore, Hyderabad, Kochi every day. So it was just too terrible. And then the kind of workload I had, that was not sustainable. And I really respect my wife for realizing that early on in her career. She switched to an internal role from consulting, and that gives us much more time and energy to pursue other things and also have time for the family. So now I think we are on a very different path. She is more on discovering her own self. She's a lot more spiritual, and she's discovering her own path in that direction, while she's obviously also growing professionally as well. I am on a different path. Again, I think that's where I am the more logical person trying to hold the finances together. She is the person who is trying to be herself and finding herself. So I think we just are never competing with each other. We do give time to each other, but in the end, we complement each other quite a lot in our thinking. And we balance ourselves from that logical and an emotional mindset together pretty well.
Wonderful. So how do two people, who are very professionally driven as well now, make space for love and life together when they come together to make कि घर बनाते हैं चलो?
I think it's also not super easy, honestly speaking. I am typically the one working harder, while she has switched to a role which is much more reasonable with respect to number of working hours. I am mostly the one जिसके कारण लड़ाई होती है कि टाइम नहीं है, वीकेंड पे भी काम कर रहे हो, कॉल्स चल रहे हैं. So it's more, I think, a balance of realizing each other's love language. Like this is something that she likes, this is something that I like, making sure that we are sort of doing that at least on a daily basis, weekly basis, and just becomes a natural part of your life. And then obviously taking a step back and finding moments to go out for travel, to spend time over weekends, going out on dates. I think all of that is something that we are sort of constantly increasing in our lives, and figuring out that together.
Amazing. And so, what do you think has marriage taught you about equality and ego?
Very deep question, honestly.
आज deep ही questions
बहुत ज़्यादा हो रहा है. For
आज मैं
people,
बिल्कुल deep mood में आया
for
हूँ.
people who are listening, I think अब 10 p.m. है, so थोड़ा सा. No, but I think marriage makes you more humble. To me, I have learned a lot knowing that there is somebody. Obviously, there's our family as a whole, but then with somebody you can actually grow together. So it's not that she is trying to grow and I'm trying to pull her. Fortunately speaking, we have very similar values. So fundamentally, deep down, we both are family oriented. We want to stick around in this city for the time being. Similar preferences of the kind of food that we like, the kind of trips that we want to do. So I think that really helps. Like we bonded together very quickly, because underlying we enjoyed the same things. So it's never a कि यार ये कर रहे हैं but ये क्यों नहीं कर रहे. I think whenever we do stuff, we both are really enjoying it. So it just very helpful, that way.
So, what's that one quality about her that grounds you the most?
Her mindfulness and awareness about herself. She's definitely much ahead in the journey of knowing herself. She writes a lot, meditates in the morning.
So, when you say writes, what does she write?
Just about herself.
Journaling.
Journals a lot. She also writes a lot about spirituality, how the world is shifting. She comes in from a spiritual angle. I come in from a technology angle. And then we keep on debating about what's going to be life after 10 years, how wellness would become important, how technology could actually be hampering us fundamentally as humans, in the way we think that might evolve. So we bring in a very different perspective to the same problem statement. And eventually, that's what I love about her, which is just her awareness and mindfulness.
Ishaan, and you said her name is Nishtha, right?
Nishtha, correct.
Yes. So, Nishtha and you represent a growing section of our society today. A couple who is young, driven, professionally successful. Do you think success can or does change the dynamics of the relationship?
If it means, again, if the definition of success is different, then it would, in a negative manner. So, for example, for me, if I were to say I was back into consulting, my definition of success was the paycheck that I brought home. But her definition of success was how much I am in alignment with what I want, for example, then we would have a conflict. She would want me to be happy. She would want to have more time for herself. But I would be traveling. I would not have a routine. I would not be in touch. And now that brings a misalignment. So, two successful people, as long as the success means the same thing, they can be together. But if the meaning of success or the values underlying which define what success is different, then it then it can create friction, which is what I have seen with my friends, unfortunately, breaking up because their underlying definition of what they wanted to do long term in their life was super different.
I think we have talked a lot about a lot of, I think, deep stuff today. At the end of the day, Eshaan, when the lights are fading out, when it's time for you to call curtains, when the metrics disappear, how, or, the journey of mindfulness, and as you said, Nishtha is already a lot into, a lot ahead in this journey as compared to you. Where would you want to see yourself? Is there an end goal? I mean, considering, I'm sure that someone like you who's done very well in terms of planning and executing them, is there an end goal that you have thought for yourself in terms of how you want this path, kind of moving forward?
Not yet, honestly. How do I end my day? I like on a typical day, on a day-to-day level, I don't think about it as much. I am a great sleeper. Like I when the curtains are literally closed, I will just sleep and doze off. I will not think about anything. But taking a step back, a larger journey, I would say I have not thought through it. Again, I know the guiding principles a lot more, but I don't know the end destination. And what I've realized over the last 10 years of me switching careers, realizing myself better is that I might never know what's that end goal, because knowing that end goal is the hardest part. It's more about the values and your discipline and your awareness brings you to an end, brings you to something that aligns you to yourself. That could be the end goal. So it's more about the process and knowing yourself rather than the outcome. यार मेरा end goal ये है कि मुझे एक tier 2 city में या पहाड़ों पे जाके रहना है एंड मुझे काम नहीं करना, स्टॉक मार्केट में इन्वेस्ट करूँगा. आई डोंट हैव दैट नोशन राइट नाउ, बट व्हाट आई डेफिनेटली वांट इज़ आई वुड वांट टू लिव ऑन माय ओन टर्म्स. आई इवन जोक दिस विद माय वाइफ, आप काम करते रहो, आई विल मैनेज द किड्स, आई डोंट माइंड एट ऑल. So I think it's just an evolving answer, but the answer is closer to bringing the peace back into my life. I think that's for sure.
I think, every generation thinks that they have gotten themselves figured out. And then we keep realizing that no, we are actually just
Correct.
trying to figure out ourselves. I mean, I think the last few things that I want to talk about is what are those, or let's just say that, I mean, what is your take on the Generation Z hustle today? What do you think about that? बहुत ये hustle एक word है जो हमारी जिंदगी का एक बड़ा अहम हिस्सा बन चुका है.
Correct.
Right? So what's your take on the Gen Z hustle that we keep talking about? Considering I feel that we are still a long way from figuring out ourselves and, I mean, in terms of a lot of things about us and about our lives. How do you define this hustle?
I would take hustle and burnout as sort of a related word, if I may sort of answer that. If you're hustling and you're enjoying what you're doing, I think it's a very cliched thought, but if you enjoy what you do, work does not look like work. And I would actually relate it to hustle. I could relate it to burnout. But for me, the Gen Z hustle, as long as they're enjoying it, it's something that will only grow them. The other way around would be if you're not aligned to something at work. It could be people, it could be learning, it could be financial growth. But if you don't have all of that and you're hustling, you will burn out. So the most important thing for anybody, not just Gen Zs, is to realize the why of why you work and just knowing it more deeply. What values to you? And as long as that hustle exists, it's not a bad thing. But a hustle without a why is running without a track. And in the end, you will just end up getting tired. So for me, that Gen Z hustle with the right mindset is actually great, but not with the right mindset is going to be detrimental in the long term.
So is there one thing about this current generation that you admire, and also, is there something that worries you?
Oh, I admire a lot of things, honestly. I lead a team of 50 people right now, out of which probably 20% would be less than 25. So one thing that, and it's more of their situations and upbringing that has got them here. I really admire that they don't take things personally. I think हम लोग को अगर किसी ने फीडबैक दे दिया नॉट गुड, तो हम लोग पर्सनली ले लेंगे, घर पे जाके सोचेंगे, रोएंगे, फैमिली से बात करेंगे यार मुझे सेल्फ डाउट हो रहा है.
So
But
that's an
when I give a feedback to somebody who is in the younger generation, either they'll be like, "Yeah, great, this is for my learning," or they'll be like, "I don't care. If you think about it, it's your problem, right?" And just detaching yourself. हमारा जो generation है ना, वो अभी 25 से, sorry, maybe millennial वाला generation है, and even हमारे parents का generation, work is identity. I think वो हम लोगों ने बहुत deeply ingrain
I
किया हुआ
agree
है.
with you. I agree
But
with you.
Gen Zs, in the right way, they have not considered work as their identity because they did not have to also in that space, right? And I really admire that. Matlab, it's something that we are trying to achieve, but they are already ahead in the journey. They will not take a toxic environment for something that they would just merely accept. They will voice out and they'll make sure that it is getting corrected. So that is something that I really admire about Gen Zs, and I really learn from them when they like share those examples with me, or like they behave that way, if I may say.
Ishaan, how much of your life is on social media?
Professionally, a lot because I had marketing, but personally, very, very less.
So
Like,
is there a
ironically,
conscious choice?
it's a conscious choice. Digital Minimalism by Carl Newport hit me quite a lot. My wife is a proponent of not looking at your phone for like half an hour or 1 hour in the morning. I am fairly restrictive towards my life being portrayed on social media. So if you go to my Instagram, my last post would be like 3 years back.
Really?
No, I'm not very good at portraying myself on social media. This podcast itself was a conscious thought. Let me actually put out my thoughts out in the world. But generally, I'm not very active on social media. The best that I would do is probably look at a few inspiring videos which inspires me at work, which is more like what can I apply to Cars24 Australia's marketing, for example. That's the best I would typically spend a time, but not more than maybe 15-20 minutes a day at max.
The one thing that, considering, and we are talking about Generation Z versus, again, as you said, maybe, there's a bit of a difference and you possibly belong to the millennials. Looking at the current generation, if you were to give them one piece of sound advice, कि यार ये लो तुम्हारा आज का ईशान बाबा का ज्ञान, what would that be?
I would say listen to your gut feeling. And sometimes I've made choices which were not aligned to my gut feeling, which were in career, which were in projects, which were in my decisions regarding my team, for example. I think gut tells you more than you think. अगर gut feeling आ रही है कि यार ये जगह monotonous हो रही है मेरे लिए, I should not be saying this because I have a team myself, but ये जगह monotonous हो रही है, मेरा learning नहीं बन रहा, nobody else will take the ownership of your career. I think we as a generation are too dependent on our managers to grow us, but in the recent terms there are a lot of things in your own hands to grow your career. If you're not feeling that you are growing enough, if you're learning enough, मनी सब फॉलो करेगा. लर्निंग ढूंढो, गट फीलिंग आ रही है, सीखने मिल रहा है तो करते चलो, अदरवाइज जस्ट स्विच एंड फाइंड समथिंग एल्स वेयर यू लर्न. सो स्किल बिल्डिंग इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, एंड दैट गट फीलिंग of telling that this is the right place, I think that's something that you have to chase, not the money. That's something that I would definitely advise to anybody who would be like 25 at this point.
Ishana, what do you think does the future of meaningful work should look like? बहुत क्लियर पिक्चर तो शायद हमारे पास अभी नहीं होगी, but at least अगर given a choice, if you had the power or the authority to make, design some sort of an algorithm that kind of decides how does meaningful work get perceived and defined, कैसे क्या बोलोगे आप, मतलब how would you create that code, or how would you write that code?
Probably single recipe नहीं होगी. I would bucket the meaningful work as an alignment more to the values. Like, for example, if I really like building something, then that is the kind of work I should be doing. If I really like relationships, then I would want people to be in a job that allows them to do it, right? I, for example, am an introvert at heart, and I was in consulting, which requires you to be super extrovert. Now, doesn't mean that I did not enjoy consulting. I learned quite a lot, but then it did make me uncomfortable beyond a point. I did not used to enjoy the parties. I do not drink. So I did not used to hang out with people on a Wednesday with wine or beer in my hands. And I used to felt a little off. So I think meaningful work will come from what excites you. And at some point, I think it will be also giving back to the society in some form. So, for example, I would love to see people learning a skill and then mentoring others to actually grow in that skill. Currently, this is not super consciously done in our society right now. Manager आपको
Very, very,
सिखाता है,
very important. Yes.
but
I
as a
completely agree.
30-year-old, for the last 10 years, have I actively mentored 10 people on things that I do well without any return of any kind. I think that's where meaningful work will come in, where you start enabling more people to be better at what they do and slowly try to find their own journey in their career. I think that's where meaningful work would evolve.
True, true. And very well said, yes. I know. I actually have been, and I think it's very important, Eshaan, what you just said about, giving back to the society in a way where you're not expecting anything in return. I think this is something that more and more, I think बहुत सारे लोग कर भी रहे हैं,
Correct,
ऐसा नहीं है.
correct.
I think I'm sure both of us do see and know a lot of people around us who are actually involved in a lot of great work where they're trying to, kind of just give back,
Correct.
right? Wonderful. I think to end our rather deep conversation, I think let's try and do this in a slightly more fun way. So maybe let's just do a quick rapid fire and get some quick answers from you, right? Define success in one word.
Peace.
One book that changed your worldview.
Courage to be disliked.
What is the most recurring 3 a.m. thought that keeps coming back to you?
How can I sleep 1 hour more?
Peace or purpose?
Very difficult one, but I would go for peace.
And advice to your younger self in one sentence.
Stay aligned with yourself. Don't wander too much.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I think thanks a ton, Eshaan. I somehow knew we would end up having a great conversation today, but what actually transpired, and I think I know we actually went fairly deep into a lot of things because I honestly and consciously wanted to talk about a few things that keep coming to my mind, and I thought that maybe you look like someone where I feel that we connected in a way where I was comfortable enough to actually come up with those areas and those questions. But thank you so much. Immensely grateful that you took out time, that you've cared, and as you said, this is your first podcast out there in the open. I think you've been involved in a few audio ones, but not a video one. So I'm very, very grateful that you took out time to come here and share more about yourself and your life and your thoughts and your mind. And I really look forward to our next conversation, hopefully sometime in the near future. And I wish you all the best in your journey, in your search towards peace, towards more stillness, towards more mindfulness. At the same time, keeping all of the 4 elements aligned that that you outlined. So great. And thank you so much, and wish you all the very best for the journey ahead. And looking forward to more such conversations, Eshaan. Even and offline as well now. Now that we have met, and I hope that we keep meeting and possibly keep talking more and more about such things. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a wonderful conversation for sure. Time just flew by, and I also felt like opening up, which is, I think, something which I don't do often. And thank you for all the thoughtful questions and the conversation.
Most welcome, Eshaan, and I really had a lovely conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.